It was a strange morning in Los Angeles on February 19th, 2013. A 21-year-old Canadian tourist named Elisa Lam was staying at the Cecil Hotel. But when she didn't return to her room, her family grew worried and reported her missing. The Cecil Hotel is no stranger to darkness. Over the years, it's become known for a string of tragic events. Suicides, murders, and even connections to notorious serial killers like Richard Ramirez. So when Elisa went missing, the police didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she ran into trouble in the city. Maybe she'd left to start over. But nothing was adding up. Then, 2 weeks later, the unthinkable happened. Elisa's body was discovered inside one of the hotel's water tanks on the roof. But here's the catch. The tank was almost impossible to reach. There was no ladder to the roof, and the roof itself was locked. The guests had been drinking and bathing in the water Elisa's body had been floating in. But the strangest part, the police couldn't figure out how Elisa had gotten in there. No one had seen her go up to the roof, and she couldn't have accessed the tank by herself. So what happened to her? Was this some kind of bizarre accident, or was it something more sinister? And then there's the elevator footage. The video that haunts everyone who watches it. Elisa is seen acting erratically, pressing multiple buttons, her body jerking as if she's trying to hide from something, or someone. The elevator doors don't close no matter what she does. She looks out of the elevator as if waiting for something or someone to appear. But nothing happens. Her body was discovered days later, but the questions remain. What was Elisa running from? Was someone in that elevator with her? Or was she trying to escape something far worse than a person? The unanswered questions about Elisa Lam's death have led many to speculate about paranormal involvement, strange coincidences, and even the dark history of the Cecil Hotel itself. We may never know what truly happened to Elisa Lam, but whatever it was enough to leave her haunting the hearts of everyone who's ever watched that chilling footage. And if you ever visit the Cecil Hotel, I wouldn't stay alone at night. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, when the Sauter family gathered in their home in West Virginia. 10 children, a loving mother, and a father, George and Jenny Sauter, sat around the fire celebrating the holiday together. But that night, something went terribly wrong. The fire started at around 1 a.m. Jenny and George were woken by the sound of crackling flames. The house was engulfed in fire so quickly that they barely had time to escape. 5 of their children perished in the blaze, and yet their bodies were never found. Not even a trace of them remained in the ashes. No bones, no clothing, just an empty, charred home. The fire department found no remains of the children. The Sauters were devastated, but something didn't sit right. They believed their children had been taken before the fire even started. But who would do such a thing? In the weeks and months that followed, strange things began to happen. The family started receiving mysterious letters from people claiming to have seen their children alive, living in different parts of the country. Others reported seeing the children in towns miles away from West Virginia, but no one could provide concrete evidence. Was this just wishful thinking, or was there something more sinister at play? A few years after the fire, the Sauters received an anonymous letter with a photograph of 5 people that resembled their missing children. The letter simply read, "Children are alive," but no one could ever confirm it. Was it possible that the children had survived the fire? Were they taken by someone, and if so, why? Why did the fire start in the first place? The Sauters believed their home had been intentionally set alight, but why? Was there a conspiracy surrounding the fire, or was it a random tragedy? To this day, the case remains unsolved, and the eerie suspicion that the children might still be alive somewhere lingers, casting a long shadow over the Sauter family. But here's the chilling thought. What if they are still out there, watching, waiting? In the early spring of 1922, 6 members of the Gruber family and their maid were slaughtered at the Hinterkaifeck farm in rural Germany. Their deaths were violent, brutal, but what makes this case even more unsettling is the terrifying discovery that came afterward. The Grubers' bodies were found inside their own home, hacked to death with a pickaxe. But that's not the most disturbing part. For days after the murders, strange things started happening. Neighbors reported seeing lights on in the house, yet no one was ever seen coming or going. It was as if the murderer, or someone else, was still living in the house, using the family's food and possessions. The authorities found evidence that someone had been sleeping in the beds, eating their meals, and staying there after the murders. Who was it, and why? Despite the eerie signs that someone was still living in the house, no one was ever caught. No fingerprints, no witnesses. The authorities couldn't even figure out how the killer managed to enter the home undetected. Some theorized that the killer had been living on the farm for some time, gaining the trust of the family before turning on them. But what about the ghosts? Some say that the spirits of the Gruber family still haunt the farm today, roaming the land that claimed their lives. Paranormal investigators who visited the site claim to have heard voices, seen shadows dart across the fields, and felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Who killed the Grubers? And what happened to the murderer? The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most mysterious and chilling cases in history, and the unanswered questions leave us wondering, is the killer still out there? June 9th, 1912. In the quiet town of Villisca, Iowa, a family of 6, along with 2 young guests, went to bed. They never woke up. The next morning, the entire family, murdered, lay in their beds, hacked to death with an axe while they slept. The killer's identity? Still unknown. The brutality of the crime was unimaginable. 6 children and 2 adults, all butchered while they lay unaware in their sleep. And the worst part, no one heard a thing. Not even the neighbors. Not a single scream. At first, the town was in shock. The brutality of the crime left the whole community in a state of fear. Who could do something like this? There were a few suspects. A traveling salesman, a local preacher, and even the family's own neighbor. But no one was ever convicted. The house where the murders occurred still stands. And over the years, it has become infamous for its paranormal activity. Many believe that the spirits of the victims still linger within the walls. Paranormal investigators who have visited the house report strange noises, objects moving on their own, and a cold, oppressive atmosphere that seems to close in on them. Some say that the ghosts of the Villisca victims are still looking for justice, and others believe the house itself is cursed, haunted by the violence that took place there. If you ever find yourself in Villisca, you might just hear the whispers. Or worse, feel a hand graze your shoulder when no one else is near. It was a snowy February night in 2004 when Maura Murray, a 21-year-old college student, crashed her car into a snowbank in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. She didn't call for help. Instead, she vanished without a trace. When police arrived at the scene, Maura's car was locked, her belongings were left behind, and there was no sign of struggle. The snow-covered woods surrounding her car were eerily silent, and despite a massive search effort, no sign of Maura was ever found. Theories about her disappearance range from abduction to voluntary disappearance, but nothing makes sense. Why would she just disappear without a trace? Why was her car left behind, untouched? Some believe she was running from something that forced her to leave. But what was it? Over the years, the case has sparked countless theories. Some believe Maura was involved in something much darker than anyone realized, while others suspect she was being stalked by someone. Could it have been a random act of violence? Or is there something far more sinister at play here? Her case is still unsolved, and Maura's family has been left with nothing but unanswered questions. And if you find yourself near the White Mountains, don't be surprised if you feel a cold shiver run down your spine. You never know. Maura Murray might still be out there, or someone is watching you. It was January 15th, 1947, when Elizabeth Short's mutilated body was discovered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. The crime was grotesque. Her body had been severed at the waist, and the details of her murder were so gruesome that the media quickly dubbed her the Black Dahlia. The case became a national obsession. But despite the widespread attention, the identity of the killer remained a mystery. Was Elizabeth involved in Hollywood's underworld? Was she a victim of some sick serial killer? The theories ran wild. What makes this case even darker is that some believe Elizabeth's ghost still haunts Los Angeles. Several people have claimed to see her ghostly figure near the place where her body was found, and some say they've heard her whispering in the dead of night. But the biggest question remains: who killed the Black Dahlia? Elizabeth Short's death was a crime that shocked the nation, and it still haunts us to this day. The Black Dahlia's spirit is said to roam the streets of Los Angeles, restless and searching for justice. Some say she's still out there, waiting for someone to tell the truth. So what do you think? Were these just tragic coincidences? Or is something far darker at play? Something that can't be explained. Something that hides in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to make itself known. I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss these stories, because sometimes the truth is far scarier than any fiction we can imagine. Stay vigilant, keep your eyes open, and don't turn out the lights.